Well, it's good to be here and see so many familiar faces and meet some new people too. I'm going to take you back 25 years to 1992. I saw bruises on my legs for no reasons. I felt tired, I felt sick, That's how many people find out that, they need to go to the doctor. And I did, and the blood tests came back, and they said platelet clumping. There was no platelet count at all. The doctor repeated the test with a different tube to make sure that I didn't have the pseudo-thrombocytopenia, and again, no clumping. I went to see a hematologist, and he diagnosed me with ITP. He said it was idiopathic thrombocytopenia purpura, which was the term at that day. And I said, well, please write that down, because I couldn't possibly remember it. And he said it was about platelets, and I said, what's a platelet? And that's where it began. And this was about a month after I saw the bruises. Well, just like many of you, he put me on high doses of prednisone, and I was non-functional pretty much, and decided to take advantage of the short-term leave of absence that I could from my job at the time. So it was, some parts of that was pleasant, because I would sit out in my patio and read a book and sit out in the sun. It was September, and I thought, well, this is not too bad. But what happened is my platelet counts didn't go up. I had an elevated heart rate, and I was really a pain in the neck to my family. And so decided that it really was time to wean me off the prednisone, because it wasn't working. So he tried IVIG, and so coming off the prednisone and then getting IVIG at the same time, I had an elevated heart rate. I got a resting pulse of 120. I had one morning something that at least some people considered a seizure. So that put me back in the hospital, now with heart medication and seizure medication, and in a hospital bed with sides, like a crib, and that was depressing to say the least. So I had more successive IVIGs, and each one worked less well, and each one gave me, I believe, some blood clots, because they're always treating me for heart attacks. I would have these sort of heart attack symptoms, and I had a little pill box of nitroglycerin that I could use that gave me splitting headaches. But anyway, all that kind of resolved, but my platelets were still low, so did what most people did. Like everybody else, I didn't want a splenectomy. I said, I don't want a splenectomy, what else can we do? But we were running out of what else can we do. And so I had a splenectomy. And this was before the days of laparoscopic splenectomy. So I have what somebody said called a shark bite. I have a big scar from the middle of my chest down to my left waist there. And they removed my spleen. And I had platelets of 2,000 when they did the splenectomy, and they pumped me up with high doses of prednisone, so I had to come off the prednisone again. But anyway, I managed to get through the operation. I was in the hospital for a week or so. But in 3 weeks, before my huge scar even healed, my platelets were down again to around 5,000. So the splenectomy didn't work. I was still trying to heal from the scar. I was coming down to the prednisone, not a pretty picture. But my hematologist, this is the second hematologist anyway, had this list, and he was always very positive. He said, oh, there are lots of things. So next we tried colchicine, which they give people for gout, and that didn't do anything. And then we tried danacrin, which is a male hormone, and I started growing a beard, which I didn't appreciate, to say the least. But it didn't work, it didn't bring my platelets up. So we're hovering around, under 5,000. One of my platelet counts was actually 0 on the automatic platelet counter. I used to go in, and hematologists would take my blood, and I could actually watch the screen to see if there were any platelets that showed up. It was kind of interesting. That was one of the nicest parts of it. But anyway, so we were getting down to the bottom of the list, and the bottom of the list at that time for ITP were things that maybe could work and that had even worse side effects than I had experienced. Of course, I was still dealing with the heart meds and the seizure meds, too. So I had a dose of vincristine, which is a chemotherapy drug. It works for some people with ITP, in the literature anyway. And it's, you know, I was warned that I could lose all my hair, which I did, and my hair fell out. And at the same time, I was getting one dose of vincristine as it was doing it, supposedly working. I had something called a prosorbicolum, which you may have heard or, you know, seen one of the pictures of, where they take you and your blood goes, you know, put you hooked up to this machine where they take your blood from one arm and put it through the machine and put it through the prosorbicolum. And then, you know, they put your blood back in the other arm, and they do this once a week for 4 weeks. And on the third one of these prosorbicolums, I fainted. And the doctor wondered how low my blood, this is later after I woke up, the doctor wondered, just how low my blood pressure had gone. Of course, a bunch of my blood was in this machine. And, I'd learned out later they were scrambling looking for the heart starter drugs. So anyway, they found them. I had one of these, light at the end of the tunnel experiences, but came back and felt very weak from all of this, but still very few platelets. So the thought was to give me another dose of vincristine. Well, the first one didn't work. I lost all my hair, so I wasn't really enthusiastic about any of this. So wasn't sure at that point what else there was. And of course, this was before Winrow was available, before Rituxan was available, and before the new, TPO mimetics were available. So it's very nice now that there are more options than I had. So at this point, I was so weak I couldn't walk upstairs. I was bald. I was incredibly depressed. And I was still on these heart and seizure meds, so I was a mess. My doctors were at their wits' end, and the one doctor said, "Have you considered praying?" But here I am today, 25 years later. I'm able to ski and hike and dance. I do Argentine tango, I do ballroom dancing, I'm taking up golf, and basically I can do whatever I want. And I've had a normal platelet count for 23 years. So, and my seizure and heart conditions are resolved, and I don't have to take those meds anymore. And so you may say, well, how did this happen? How did she recover from this very incredibly dire situation I was in? Well, it wasn't all at once. So as these medications that I described kept failing, I decided to look at other options. And so I went to a naturopath, and he suggested some supplements and diet changes. I talked to a psychologist who pulled some tapes off her shelf and gave them to me to listen, and they were pretty much visualization tapes. And she also did a big favor. She convinced me to take charge of my health. Before then, I was very much caught in the sort of the prevailing thought of the time is the doctors know everything and the doctors know best. And my mother would say, "Oh, have you listened to your doctor?" So it took a little mind shift for me to say, and with my psychologist's help, to say, no, there are things I can do to affect my own health. I also visited a medical intuitive, and she had a Native American background, and she taught me, among many things, she taught me how to do this Native American meditation with totem animals. And so that was really interesting. I walked into her office, and she said she'd never seen an aura as big as mine, but there was a little green at the edges, so that means I was at least on a healing path. And she said, oh, you don't have any spleen energy. And of course, I didn't have a spleen, but she didn't know that. So it was really an amazing experience. And I went to an energy therapist. This is a Reiki healer. Now, I met Amy in the hospital, of all places. She was the nurse who administered the Prosorba column, who knew how to hook up all the, the little tubes to other little tubes, and she knew the pattern. So in the hospital, she was there, and she put her hand on my arm, and she says, and it got very warm, and I said, what is that? And she said, well, it's Reiki. And anyway, I could go on, but so I got her name, and after I left the hospital, this is my last hospitalization, she came to my house and gave me these energy treatments. And then I visited an Ayurvedic doctor. Ayurveda is a centuries-old Indian method of healing, as in India. And this Ayurvedic doctor gave me 9 pages of things to follow, but some very helpful herbs, and also a different kind of meditation, transcendental meditation. So I didn't stop there, kept going and looking for other things. So I came down to a very long list. And if I thought something was going to help and it didn't have a big downside risk, always, some of these things have side effects too, I tried it. And I added one thing at a time, and if I knew it was working, I kept doing it, and if I didn't, I stopped. Like for me, vitamin C seemed to make my platelets go down. Well, and you certainly didn't do that. So I kept looking, and the end result was, after a year of trial and error, and many hours a day actually spending on, my wellness and my healing, I had a normal platelet count. There was a little time when I was under a lot of stress from my job where it dipped a little bit, but then I was able to, with the help again of some of these same healers and same modalities, bring it back up. But I was thrilled, my family was thrilled, and it was a big victory, obviously. And I had my life back, because honestly, for that time when I was incredibly sick and near death, according to me and my doctors, it was pretty tough. So that's an abbreviated version of my story, because I knew that a lot of people would want what I wanted, which was a life and normal platelet count. I wrote a book, and that's available at the platelet store. And after this talk, available for a little book signing or just to chat. And also, since I recovered, I founded PDSA, which many of you know. And because, again, I knew that people would want to know about the things that I did that helped and would want a life back. And I went to a hematology meeting, and I talked to one of these noted hematologists, and I told them my story, and their attitude wasn't particularly welcoming. And actually, that was the desire to do the website that led to the organization, so we have some of those hematologists to thank, in a way. So I still talk. When I was leading PDSA, I talked to a lot of patients. This is one of the most fun part, one of the most fun parts of the job. And I still do that occasionally. I get referrals from PDSA, and they say, Joan, you want to talk to this person? They'd like to know about complementary things. And I do, chat with them. And one of these people actually seemed to want me to lead them step by step, almost to take charge of their health. Well, what would I do next? Well, what would I do after that? And of course, I couldn't do that. I certainly couldn't do it over the phone, and it doesn't work anyway. Because first of all of you know from being at this conference that not everything works for everybody. Prednisone doesn't work for everybody. Even those new TPO agents don't work for everybody because ITP is so different. So it wouldn't be credible for me to say, okay, the things that I did would work for everybody, because I don't think that is true, or could be true, actually. So, but I think some of the approaches that I took would work for everybody. And I think probably all of you were here for Dr. Power's speech. And one thing you'll notice in my list that I have and his list is the similarities. Now, I knew in general what Dr. Powers was going to talk about, but I didn't know his exact list nor hear his exact talk. And so I was kind of surprised and amazed, really, at how similar these lists were, and they were done independently. So the first one I have that I did, and you'll see I did all these, is take charge of your health. This is the big lesson from my psychologist. And in fact, you have a lot of control over your health. You have control over what you eat and drink, and who you listen to, and who you hang around, and what you think, and more. And I made some effort to deal with all of these things. I did make huge changes to my diet, and I made changes to, who I related with, whether they would drag you down or not. You need positive things in your life and positive job, and I changed all of that. The second one is try one thing at a time. Now, I think it was Dr. Gernsheimer mentioned that people come to her and they have, a whole box full of pills that they take daily or something like that. And I know people, some of my friends do that. They say, here are my vitamins, and they bring out this container that's filled with all these different pills. And when I went to a naturopath, he suggested all these different things, but I had a science background and I kind of knew better. In science experiments, you control one variable at a time. And so I would try one thing at a time. And if it worked, I kept it on the list and I kept doing it, like meditation or like the Reiki. And if it didn't work, like the vitamin C, I don't care what the literature said, it didn't work for me. And you know what the good thing is about ITP is you can tell if something's working or not, because you have the bruises. I had the red dots in my mouth. If I did something and the red dots increased, I said, whoa, it's not for me. Off the list. Another thing for number 3 is follow your intuition. And everybody has that. And what happened to me one time is I was looking at my bookshelf, and this book just kind of kept calling to me. And it was a book on Ayurvedic medicine. And in fact, the Ayurvedic herbs were a big part of my healing. And it was that book that inspired me to call a doctor, an Ayurvedic doctor, and follow that path. Amy, just number 4 is listen to your body. Amy, my Reiki person who came to my house after the last hospitalization, this was her big suggestion. And it's basically, listen, if you're tired, rest. If you're stressed, relax. I mean, it seems like such a simple thing, but it was a huge, huge part of my healing. Number 5 is be all in. That's what Dr. Powers talked about, and I certainly was. I mean, I was determined. And at one point, I was decided that being in the sunshine and being by the beach would help, and I was really housebound. So there was sunlight coming into one part of my dining room, so I'd take my beach towel there and bask in the sun. I had an ocean. I would took salt baths or something. I don't know. But anyway, whatever I could do, I mean, I was right there. Number 6 would be ask for guidance. There was, the medical intuitive who taught me the meditation with the power animals. She would say, well, pretend you're sitting with your back by a tree and call in the animals. And the question is, what do I need to know? And then you listen. And I did that. And there are many ways of tapping into spiritual guidance. But it's, there are a lot of powers out there, not Dr. Powers, but a lot of, spiritual powers that people believe in different ways, but can be a huge source of inspiration, I found. And number 7 is work with the doctors and healers and friends you trust. I had the privilege of working with so many wonderful healers and people who inspired me. I did a lot on my own, but I certainly appreciated all the help that I got. So I continue with a lot of the things that I learned, not to the extent that I did at one time, but I still eat well, I still exercise, I still watch what I eat and drink, and I could go on about the things that I do. I try new things. I moved to Sedona. There was a Qigong teacher, so I do some Qigong. So there is a world of things you can do. So PDSA has some wonderful resources to help. There's a whole complementary medicine section on the PDSA website. I don't know if you know this, but you go on that and follow each link, and there are many pages and there are many resources. There's been some research on some of these things, so it's not all unscientific, as some people may think. And the problem may be that there are too many things that you could possibly do to help or improve your health. And so that's where intuition comes in. So what calls you? What calls you to, start? Is it diet changes? Is it relaxation? Is it yoga? What is it that calls you? And that's important to listen to. Another thing, plug for PDSA here, is the PDSA will post things to their Facebook page periodically, a couple times a week. And this has not only new science evidence in terms of, the harder sciences or what's new, what the ITP researchers are doing, but it also has links to the research of what would you consider softer things, like how beneficial is it to go walk in the woods? There's some research on that, and so PDSA posts these things to the Facebook page, and so you can just get new inspirations all the time. So I had no idea in 1992 that I would have such a life change, that PDSA would lead me to a new life, which it did, really. I thought it would kill me, but it almost did, but instead it opened up a whole new world of healing, and I've learned so much about being healthy and staying healthy And it was a great starting point for PDSA and all of you. And I just want to say that I'm grateful, in addition to Caroline and the volunteers and the staff who continue to grow this organization. I'm also grateful for my daughter Andrea, son-in-law Jeff, who's back there taking the videos, who continue to support the organization. And I have 2 wonderful grandchildren that you may have seen, around here, at the ice cream social. And it's just been a pleasure. And thank you for inviting me again and for listening.